Hello and welcome back, everyone. Today we are going to be going over a rather big Tinto talk on the 100 Years' War. This is one of the remaining two Tinto talks that people think are kind of the biggest of the Tinto talks that have yet to be covered. And so kind of the speculation is that they will do the two of these at some point before release. And so seeing this one here is indicative of perhaps nothing. So this is, of course, in the upcoming game with the codename Project Caesar. And as you can see, there's a bunch of stuff for us to get through. We did play a little bit of England as we were testing out the game and giving feedback and this type of thing, although we kind of ran into a game or a bug that bricked our save file, and so we didn't end up continuing, but we are going to be talking a little bit about the 100 Years' War, as well as our experience and some thoughts on it and this type of thing. So, let's get into it. Hello and welcome to another Tinto Talks, the Happy Wednesdays. Now, of course, Happy Wednesday, everyone, but also secondarily, Pavia welcomes the Fridays, but he happies the Wednesdays. And so this feels like there's some sort of secret message, some sort of secret code here that Pavia is trying to tell us, but alas, he doesn't tell us directly, and he also doesn't capitalize the Wednesday. It's a holiday, it should be capitalized, where we talk about Europa Universalis 5. Now, as you guys know, obviously this is just another code name. It's an anagram. Some of you are upset that it's an anagram, but that's okay. It, of course, is listed on Steam, which you can wishlist it now if you would like to support the development of the game. It's advertised as Europa Universalis 5, but it's an anagram. Everyone knows that the real name is, of course, Averse Ravioli Sunup, which is a much more reasonable name for a game. When, you know what they say, when the raviolis are up, then the sun is also up. That's what they say. Today we will be talking about another very impactful early game situation, the 100 Years' War. Now, our experience with the 100 Years' War is that it was usually well over 100 years. I don't know. I think we only saw the 100 Years' War resolve once in our game, and that wasn't due to our influence, really, whether as either England or France or something like this. But let's continue. Historically, the war started when, in May of 1337, Philip the Sixth, not to be confused with Philip the Seventh, confiscated the Duchy of Aquitaine from Edward III of England for reasons of breaching his obligations as a vassal, which was responded to by Edward III, claiming the throne of France by the rights of his mother, Isabella of France. The situation was way more complicated than this, so let's leave the historical events here. So, no more history here, just time for gameplay. In our game, a couple months after the start of the game, so in June of 1337, the event will trigger to France, where France gets an opportunity to handle things. King Edward III Plantagenet of England has granted the disgraced Lord Sire Robert refuge. For the last few years, Robert has avoided the summons of King Philip the Sixth, the fortunate de Valois, for his crimes of forgery in an attempt to seize the county of Artois. While King Edward III is the ruler of England, he is also a vassal. While King Edward III is a ruler of England, he's also our vassal, his rule over Aquitaine. He's also our vassal through his rule over Aquitaine. King Edward III was a vassal? As such, the harboring of fugitive Sir Robert d'Artois would create a justification to seize the Duchy of Aquitaine should King Edward III refuse to comply in surrendering him. I didn't realize that he was technically a subject of France. However, such a veiled threat towards the English court runs the risk of starting a conflict. Alright? Demand that he surrender the fugitive lord, provoking the English court would be ill-advised. And so, the AI, I'm assuming, will always do this. I don't think we saw a single time where we did not pop the 100 Years' War. And we will see demand King Edward surrender the fugitive lord, will give us a 10 prestige and draws us closer to a war with England. And then we see that if we choose the other option, we gain 7 stab and lose 10 prestige. And actually, and he may encourage King Edward III to press his claim to France through Dame Isabella the She-Wolf Capet against our Salic laws. Interesting. Should King Edward refuse, we gain claim to Aquitaine, giving us cores. Now, in terms of gameplay, this 7 stab is, in exchange for 10 prestige, is much better than just 10 free prestige, in my opinion. And then this is us choosing to give King Edward claims on us. So I think that this is This is the historic option, and one AI always chooses, but I wonder if you could still get to fight the war and get the 7th stab. Kind of keen on 7th stab. This is the French point of view, or sorry, the English point of view. The King of France has demanded that we return Sir Robert d'Artois, who has taken refuge in our court and has lately become a trusted advisor for King Edward III Plantagenet. Should we act in defiance of the French king, they may move to confiscate the Duchy of Aquitaine. During his time in the English court, Sir Robert has argued that the King Edward III Plantagenet should be the rightful ruler of France. With his Capetian lineage through his mother, Dame Isabel the She-Wolf Capet, and that the previous declaration of Salic law enthroned King Philip VI, the Fortunate de Valois, was illegitimate. As such, this may serve as an opportunity to claim the throne of France for ourselves. So, generally speaking, this 100 Years' War, like the entire thing, in the aggregate, seems to just kind of be give more opportunities for England than for France, because as England, I think you do get the opportunity to go for like a PU, but France doesn't really get anything and just needs to absolutely crush England to end it, or this was kind of our impression. But let's continue, because we didn't really get that deep into the event, or the situation, as it were. Defy the French king and make preparation to invade. The French court will see this as a violation of King Edward III's vassal obligation, and will move to confiscate the Duchy of Aquitaine, granting them cores on all Aquitanian locations. We will gain cores on Sir Robert's claim of County of Artois in the province of Arras, along with the province of Amiens. Should we conquer the portions of Artois, we may grant Sir Robert those territories and make him a vassal, which seems good enough, because those would be far away from where you could propagate control anyways, as an English king in England. We change the societal levels values plus 10 towards belligerent. I think that conciliatory is probably a little bit better than belligerent, but if you're looking to conquer as maximum as possible, belligerent will be better. We gain the invasion of France preparations, 25 army tradition, and gain the throne of France a casus belli for 4 years. Now, it was my impression overall, the music's starting to get a little loud, we'll crank it back down a little bit, but it was my impression, generally speaking, or playing as England, it seemed that you could do really well by waiting until after your first parliament, and then using the parliament to increase the amount of levies you have by like an enormous margin, and then with just those levies, because the longbowmen are levies, you would have a pretty nice army that you could kind of get to Calais before they could overrun Calais. Other than that, being able to land an army in France would be very, very difficult. But okay, let's continue. Defy the French king and make preparation to invade France. So that's this one option here, okay. And then the other option, this current status quo must be respected. Surrender Sir Robert. We get some stab, we lose some prestige, we gain 120 opinion on Kingdom of France, and he moves to the Kingdom of France. I think that in theory, it might be the case as as France, that it's better to actually not trigger the 100 Years' War. And then as England, it's better because you can get claims on the entire kingdom, whereas France is not going to be getting claims on everything. If my just kind of rough analysis, like this kind of seems like it's maybe the case, but if the historical options are followed, which is set to always happen when the AI countries have control, this will happen. The Crown of France. The King of England claims that they are the rightful throne, or that they are the rightful throne. The rightful ruler? The rightful throne? Is that, like, correct? Grammatically, they claim that they're a rightful throne. We're a chair, as they do not agree with that the ruler of the Kingdom of France should be determined by Salic law, as they view that King Edward III of Plantagenet has the better claim, as his mother, Dame Isabel the She-Wolf Capet, was the sister of Count Charles the Fair Capet, while King Philip the VI, the Fortunate de Valois, is much further related. And so we will say, of course, the English are fools, as we will, in French, of course, which everyone knows the way you say that is je suis un chat, and we will continue and trigger this situation of the 100 Years' War. And so we will have Edward's looking way better in the stat lines, eh? Philippe's not looking so good. Maybe he should be king. That is that's a cool 220 in terms of total stat line, and here we have, like, what is this, 116 or something? And so, find new allies is an interesting one. Is this from the perspective of... I think that this must be from the perspective of England? I'm not 100% sure. Both actually try and find allies, so maybe this is part of the thing. Grant subject titles. Maybe this is from the perspective of France. We can see that no one supports either side currently. And then in our games, what we noticed is a lot of times the East portions would end up supporting England in kind of a lot of situations. And also, France's subjects do not automatically answer the call initially because a lot of them are disloyal, but I think there's also in-game mechanics that make it so that they don't answer the call. And initially, before we declared the war, our plan was to separate CB or separate peace out all their subjects and just take a whole big slew of land, because if you have disloyal subjects, you can separate CB them or you can separate peace them from their overlords. And one of the reasons they're so disloyal is because so much of France's power is in their subjects, so relatively speaking, they have a lot of power relative to the Kingdom of France, and France hasn't really gotten to ramp up at all at game start, and so they're not more powerful. You can, with this amount of land, be a lot more powerful than your subjects, but that's not the case with France at game start. So the idea was to conquer all this, but then the subjects didn't come in, so left us with a bit of an interesting situation. But continuing here, we do see find new allies, and very often this situation would be eventually most of the countries in the kind of west, in terms of the French subjects, would be supporting France, and then in the east, several of the ones, particular ones with HRE territory, did support England in a lot of the times we observed this. The starting situation in the 100 Years' War with the French and English subjects. You can notice the striped vassals, which means that these are disloyal subjects. Womp womp. The striping even looks like it goes through England or like Aquitaine and this, but Aquitaine is operating under the Kingdom of England currently. As you can see, the contender has their own set of objectives, and like France's is just like take everything, I think. But with England, it is a union with England. Or sorry, France will have a personal union. So this means that the same king will sit on both the thrones, but it will be a separate country if England wins this. The French victory conditions are that England does not exist. This is possible. They have less than 4 locations in France, or that we are a subject or below of France. Now, in one of our games we played, we just kept running over France with the help of England and kind of using England to just kind of help us to crush France. And France got significantly laid out, but that England couldn't put in the finishing blow, so they never became a subject, and so we could just kind of continued and eventually ate most of France. And so I'm not sure. I feel like if France becomes sufficiently weak, this should end too, but maybe that's just the problem of the AI not being very good at enforcing their war goals in particular. You can also see that there's a strength comparison. England's relative military strength to France, 50%. France's relative military strength. In general, what we observed a lot of the times that France would be getting the upper hand, but would never really conclude or put in the finishing blow on England. Yeah, the problem is you need to have England not exist, right? Or at least one of those. Or you need to actually just lose in order to end these. It looks like... No. Why have we never seen this if just... We've seen France kick out England in terms of number of locations, with owner or top overlord being England less than 4, I feel like. Maybe we haven't actually seen this as closely as we thought. And we were missing that, maybe something like Burgundy or one of these off to the side became a subject of England, and so this is why we never see it. But we've definitely seen France take all of Aquitaine. But okay, continuing on, with this situation and the claims of peace, it's just a matter of time before one of the sides declares war on the other, and we will have the throne of France as our war goal, and we will have less costs on our stuff, and also, continuing on, defend the throne of France, is the other one from the French side. The target is Middlesex, which is this... This must be actually in English proper, which is kind of annoying that you have to land them rather than taking a whole bunch of the Aquitaine and calling that a day. But that perhaps makes some sense. And then we will get ourselves a war. And then we see the defending sides. We see quite a few in here. Now, most of these look like English subjects. We see Wales in there. Some other Welsh kind of subjects. We see Aquitaine in there. But nobody in here is looking like they are one of the eastern kind of supporters of France, or the West Germany / Eastern France French supporters. Something interesting that each war is considered a phase of the situation. So until it ends, any war between England and France will be considered first phase, second phase, and so on. We see a lot of kind of wars that aren't particularly decisive between England and France. Basically, for like 200 years, they just fight each other, which leaves them kind of like it feeling like there's a bit of a power vacuum. As long as they're just fighting each other, you have a lot less to worry about from either of these powers. I feel like if you're playing something like Holland, or like in the western portion of the HRE, or if you're even playing Castile or something like this, they do seem generally kind of occupied with each other. The situation panel will also refresh when the war starts so that you can quickly check and see everything related to it. Let's talk now about the actions. There's a common action that either of the sides could do if the wars lasted for longer than 4 years, and that is request Pope to enforce a white peace among the contenders. We see this a lot, and this is why a lot of the wars are not necessarily decisive. And it does make it so, like, look at this. This is not very, very expensive. You pay out to the Pope. The Pope kind of crushes out the war, and you don't have to fight the remainder of it. And so we've seen this quite a bit. We've also just seen status quo white pieces between the two AI powers when they're fighting. The most important are those related to the French subjects. Their objective for France will be rein them in and have them contribute to the war effort in the conflicted phases, while for England it will be to convince them to abandon the French king in the second phase. And so if you declare it as early as possible, it's kind of just a 1v1, or it's England and her subjects versus just France. But France is kind of bigger than England just overall, and so it does feel relatively even. I think as a player you can probably win both sides of the initial conflict, and that if you get support from either side, this will be helpful. Eventually France has some mechanics that help them to integrate a lot of their subjects, and as they start to eat a lot of their subjects over the course of time, it will probably get harder and harder for England to manage the situation, especially if France has concerted efforts towards making sure that the better of the subjects or the bigger of the subjects aren't helping out England. But we can see grant subjects and titles. We will be able to improve opinion. You will just be able to just normal improve opinion. And so jockeying for support of the subjects is probably something you do if you can't deliver a killing blow in kind of the first initial war, which may be difficult to do. Here we see influence French subject as an English thing that we can do. And the French subject may be convinced to not join any defensive wars for the next 5 years in exchange for 300 ducats. That's not quite buckets of ducats, but that is a pretty penny. But this will be useful if you want to kind of prevent, obviously, one of the bigger ones from joining. The French subjects have their own gameplay and actions related to the relationship with the French sovereign, and if they stay loyal to them or not. We can demand more autonomy, we can demand a border adjustment, we can betray our allegiance. Very interesting. We have no, I didn't even consider, exploring the gameplay perspective, but someone like Brittany is actually probably a decently fun run. You have a lot of good and interesting territory in Brittany. You can make Brittany's a nice location for a new market, can colonize relatively easily, and Brittany, for those of you who don't know, is in the top left corner of France, and so that I think would be an interesting run to play, as would maybe something like Burgundy. Of course, if you want to play smaller, you can do that. Demand border adjustment. It's come to our attention that our neighbors, our peers, fellow subjects of the Kingdom of France currently control part that we consider ours. It's come to our attention that they have something we now consider ours. This matter must be pursued with the utmost urgency, lest we risk losing valuable land, and we can see that we demand that they return the selected core back to our control. Who's it? Picardy. Let's take a quick look at the map here. Does have some really nice land Let's see. Flanders has some really nice land, actually. Flanders has some of the very nicest of lands, and we're not thinking of actually Picardy, or Picardy is the what is it, the culture that is right here. But Flanders has incredibly nice land and is probably relatively interesting for forming the Netherlands, especially considering once you form the Netherlands, you do get all their stuff, or like you get their advances once you form them. So that might be a decent shout. Some of the best territory is in there. Just generally speaking, like this kind of blocky area has really good, or not the best resources, best land, has really some very good land. Brittany, of course, in the top left here. We were talking about them a little bit earlier. Here we see we can, this is them demanding border adjustment, continuing along, betraying our allegiance, costs a bit of crown power here. Or not crown power, this is legitimacy. The tides of war changed. While once we had pledged our sword and assistance with our allies in the ongoing conflict, we must reconcile reality and pursue different course of diplomacy in our effort to spare our people the horrors of war and subjugation. Now, flip-flopping sides is probably a decent strategy. It is in the Italian kind of situation, and so maybe this is another one where helping someone to become quite a bit stronger, and then switching sides to the other, and then helping them for a bit, and then maybe even switching back, just prolonging the 100 Years' War as a means by which you can acquire more and more power and make sure that both France and England do not get too powerful. This might be a little bit of a thing that you can play out yourself, especially if you're in a good position to leverage or fight both of them or either of them. Like Brittany and Flanders, both being on the edge of France and England, are probably in a bit of a better situation, where someone like Burgundy might have some difficulty fighting France if they are going to fight against France, although that's kind of what we've seen historically. But we have, despite assurances from France, many of our advisors support the idea of turning against them. The tide of war may change, and we would be do well to be ready. By dispatching the proposal to England, maybe we can bridge our differences and shift the balance of power. So if you're a French subject and you France becomes a PU under England, that's probably bad for you overall. I would have to imagine, because that won't make it so you have to kind of resist both. So I imagine helping England, helping France in general would be better, or ensuring that France does not lose. It's best is maybe to play both sides. So at the end of the day, one of the contenders will probably be strong enough to defeat the other. This isn't really how we've observed it. It just seems super, super stalematey. In the case of France, it's straightforward. No more independent English presence on the continent. This might be the fact that... Wow, that's a loud car. Must be expensive. It's surely still on the continent. But maybe the situation when we have taken a look at it was not yet, or was bugged or something like this. Or maybe we didn't really correctly evaluate what English presence was. But I'm pretty sure we saw the English presence removed from France and the situation continued. But if it's just as easy as removing this English presence in the continent, then France completing this is going to be much easier. And maybe this situation was even updated as a result of feedback, because it seemed like it was very hard for France to resolve this, and this doesn't seem that hard. In the case of England, besides pure conquest, the claim throne of France peace goal requires England or its subjects control more than 15% of the ownable locations in the French region. So this means you will not be able to do it in one phase. You'll have to first acquire more land in the French region, and then you must also control the capital of France to apply this. Taking Paris is not going to be the difficult part, so maybe in a couple phases you can do it. The disloyal subjects don't honor the call initially against France, so you can 1v1 in first phase, and then second phase they maybe have diploed some of their subjects to be more loyal and stuff like this, and maybe you bribe a couple of them and have another go at France, something like this. And then for France, I'm not sure if you can get all of England out in one go. You know what? Maybe this counts people who are just supporters. For France being able to win, it just English presence counts French subjects that support England. Maybe this is the case. in which case just getting them to support you and then taking out Aquitaine or returning Aquitaine to the fold is going to be sufficient. The cost of this treaty depends on two factors, a base cost and a fluctuating cost based entirely on the relative strength between the two countries. So stronger England would inevitably make this a treaty much somewhat cheaper. I wonder if you just completely stack wipe and occupy all of France, if their power goes down to 0 in this, in which case maybe you could do this in 2 wars by pushing in this way. A little bit interesting. Or I imagine, though, it counts the levies, in which case you decimating the control of France would be useful, because I believe that you get less levies from locations if they have low control. So interfering with the infrastructure of France, as well as the veins through which they propagate control out of Paris, would be kind of probably the way you approach it. And so just like conquering all the locations in a circle around Paris would probably be the amusing and silly way of doing this relatively effectively. Because you don't push control through enemy or foreign territory. This would just deny control to the rest of France. But in theory, France should just move their capital at that point. But this wasn't a behavior we noticed the AI engaging in too much, the moving of their capital. And that's it on the mechanical part of the situation. But there are also a bunch of events, both randomized and historical, that are dependent on it. The Scots king in exile. We did see the Scotland help out France quite a few times. Ever since the Battle of Hallandon Hill in 1333, that's a lot of threes, the King David II de Bruce and his closest advisors have lived in exile in France under the protection of King Philip the Sixth, the Fortunate de Valois. I'm just going to start saying King Philip. In the years since King David exile, the pretender King Edward, backed by England, has fought against the forces loyal to King David in Scotland in an attempt to claim the Scottish throne for himself. Since the signing of the Old Alliance in 1295, Scotland and France have maintained a close relationship. Should Balliol succeed in Scotland, it will surely see the kingdom succumb to the English influence once more over time. If the faction loyal to King David is to succeed, it will need the backing of which of course is the important thing. And so we can grant him resources court. We will support him and his cause. Scott's cause is lost, and offer King David back to King Edward for support. Oh, interesting. You can just throw him back to England. But we have seen France and England team up kind of when we've paid attention. We see mercenaries in the 100 Years' War. The mercenary company, the small mercenary company, has gathered, I'm sure this is a dynamic name that will be something other than small mercenary company, probably the Free Company, has gathered in London, drawn by the bloodshed between France and England. Sensing an opportunity to profit from the chaos, they offer their services to the highest bidder. With skilled warriors at their command, their allegiance could tip the scales of balance in the prolonged conflict. We see it costs 200. We will hire the company, which of course the_100_years_war, and we will get the small mercenary company, Sir Edgar Cullenbedy, as the commander. But also, we see something pretty nice here. Look at this UI update for the cities. In particular, we are noticing capitals being highlighted very strongly on the map here, and also what level of urbanization these capitals are is also being shown, where a diamond, you can see a diamond right here, I do believe is a city, a square is a town, and a circle is a rural area, if I'm not mistaken. Here we can see a better look at this, where we will see, hey, there's a diamond here, city, 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 a smattering of towns. Urbanization, of course, increases, generally speaking, over time, and we see some rural areas as well as capitals here, but it's not like flooding the zone with every single version of these, but I'm sure that if we if you're at war, maybe your own cities and towns and this type of stuff show more, or maybe fortifications also show up on the map. This is something from a UI perspective that you're trying to be information dense without just having everything look chaotic and this type of thing. But here we see relations between the nobles and the commoners have reached a breaking point, and where now the peasantry have begun to rise in disorderly manner all across France. Not ideal. These mobs, armed with scythes and pitchforks, are led by no general, but instead anger. Is a scythe really even a very good weapon? I feel like it's not a very good weapon relative to a spear. Their goals are simple. They desire only to upend the social order and destroy all living symbols in their repression. Well, I mean, I think I have an idea for making them happy. Why wouldn't you not just offer them up some cakes? And then they wouldn't be so upset. That sounds like something French people might enjoy. But if our great nation is to survive, we must crush this rebellion and set out a historical example of what happens when one steps out of their station. So, we will see nobles gain satisfaction. That's a lot of pops. We'll join the Jacquerie. We will gain nobles crushing rebellion for 10 years, and the Jacquerie gains progress. Is this a rebellion? Well, I mean, it says rebellion, but it's brewing. We will see Joan of Arc as 1431 progresses. France finds itself at a crossroad. The constant, humiliating defeats suffered at the hands of England have left the military and civil leadership demoralized and discredited. When King Philip granted Joan d'Arc's urgent request to be equipped for war and placed in the head of an army, his decision must have been based on a large part on the knowledge that every rational option had been tried and failed. Yikes. Only a regime in the final straits of desperation would pay heed to an illiterate farm girl who claimed to be the voice of God, was instructing her to take charge of the country's army and lead it to victory. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the vibe fits. We gain army tradition. She will be allowed to lead troops, and she moves to the Kingdom of France and gains Maid of Orleans for 2 years. And here we will see she gets 99 admin. Wow. That's a stat line. Holy. I mean, she's the voice of God. Surely she is holy. She has very nearly... I mean, she only has minus 13 from 300, right? So that's math, but like it's 287, right? In terms of total stats. That's wild. You're just putting her in the cabinet. Leading troops, why would you do that? Except for this is probably good for leading troops. I don't know what this symbol does exactly. I think the purple ones are usually for cabinet stuff or ruler stuff, and the red ones are for leading armies. Blue attributes are for leading navies, but she's also of the peasants, so having her as a cabinet member would actually be nice, because it gives the peasants a little bit more power. And them having more power means more tax is going to a highly taxable estate. Or that's my understanding of how the taxes are distributed. It's not like a direct proportional thing, I don't think. I think there's some like weighting going on relative to like crown power. I'm not sure the exact guts of how that works. But that's all for today. We will come back Friday as we will have a Tinto flavor about France, which I am very excited about. It'll be... I didn't get to test out at all on France, and it'll be very cool to kind of take a look at them. They are one of the bigger countries that I didn't test out. France and the Ottoman Empires. The Ottoman Empire, I think, are kind of the two ones that have a lot of flavor that we didn't take a very close look at. So that'll be exciting. And also remember, you can wish Europa Universalis 5 on Steam now, which of course the devs keep reminding you because that does help them out. Yeah, that's all for today. Or actually... that's probably mostly all for today. I'm trying to think of if there's anything in our experience that we really felt like we should highlight. I don't really think that there's too much other than it's very interesting that England gets special conscripts, or they have unique advances for conscripts for longbowmen, which are particularly strong. And so both doing that and leaning into ways of getting more levies, whether it's parliament or increasing control, because the more control you have, the more levies you have, as a means of fighting rather than having a regular fighting force, is something that is a little bit interesting, because it does seem that they are trying to make it so that you can go like one of three strategies for fighting, or for procuring military, or a combination of the three is going to be effective, and that is levies. You can get techs that upgrade your levies. Levies can get much stronger if you get techs that unlock better levies. You also have just a regular standing army, which doesn't really need much explanation, and mercenaries, which doesn't necessarily need that explanation, but we didn't explore it that closely. I think mercenaries do benefit from some of your military infrastructure, and so having mercenaries and regulars and levies and regulars, or looking at it from that perspective, is maybe going to be kind of a good way of doing it. But I think you can also lean entirely on either mercenaries if you're really, really rich, but I don't know what exactly affects how much of them spawn. I think it is influenced by the buildings you have, and military buildings are preferable. But also, just levies, you can have like a really levy-heavy army, and which is what England has, and the way you kind of approach it with England. Whereas France, I think, gets levies, noble levies, for, you know, having like cavalry or this type of thing, or better noble levies, and England gets... I can't remember if it's commoner. I think it's commoner levies in the form of longbowmen, which makes it so that the more commoners you have, the better. So France can focus on promoting people. If these are noble levies, they can focus on promoting people to nobles by building buildings that employ nobles, whereas England just needs more raw people in order to get more longbowmen, which perhaps creates some like interesting kind of sorts of situations. And also, you can separate piece subjects. So, just taking a quick look at the map, if these guys start joining wars, if there's ways as England to make them disloyal, you don't even necessarily have to like enforce on France proper. You can enforce on the subject, separate piece them, as long as they've been made disloyal. And so trying to maneuver, to make the subjects more disloyal, whether it's through espionage or another thing, so you can separate piece them and look to do that, and then use the Pope action, where it forces a white peace after 4 years, as a means to kind of hit and run France. Might be an interesting way of approaching the sort of conflict here, right? Where England, you just get a really big navy, a crack force of troops, and then what France has to do is they have to occupy England in order to enforce on you, and what you do is you just keep Aquitaine, you keep them loyal, and then wherever France is not, you sail your boats there, you quickly try and siege down a disloyal subject, and then you full annex the subject, and then you peace out. You don't peace out by enforcing on France, you peace out with the papal kind of intervention, and you just keep doing this multiple times until you like scoop up Flanders, Normandy, Brittany, something like this, and then I think that's probably 15%, and then after that you go for the throat, maybe try and get Burgundy and etc. as help, and maybe here you start to have a bit more to be able to go in on France. I think you can just fight France straight up. It's a little bit difficult, but just on the land, you just push in here on Calais, and land all your conscripts before they manage to march on Calais, and I think you can maneuver around and do this. But if there's a situation where you can't, this sort of hit and run, separate piecing out the subjects tactic maybe is effective, and is an interesting kind of play pattern, where you make where you engage in espionage and an otherwise a loyal subject who joined the fight against you to make them disloyal mid-fight, and then you look to separate piece them. So in terms of execution, it seems like there's some interesting lines, especially if there's an asymmetry in how the two nations are strong, like England just having a stronger navy but a weaker army. There seems like there's maybe ways you can jockey around it, but France only needing to eject England will not have too much difficulty in just taking the stuff. But if the war goes in England proper, the actual enforcement is going to be difficult. But France can also do the thing in reverse, where you take Aquitaine and try and make them disloyal. So that's also, so you can separate piece them, and then you end the 100 Years' War. So that's maybe another thing to kind of think through. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe. Hit the notification bell, do the YouTube algorithm thing, and other than that, y'all have a good one.